Hello and welcome to the big picture. The decision of the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approving a new formula in fixing gas prices, which will go up from the present $4.20 a unit to $8.40 from April next year, has created a furor. The decision, which the government defends as necessary to encourage investment in exploration so that we need not be import dependent later, is however being criticized as having been done to please a particular corporate house. However, the government has defended itself again, saying that it would be applicable to all companies, private and public sector, and therefore companies like ONGC and Oil India will gain in a major way. However, the concern is that this would raise the cost of fertilizers and power and will hit the common man in a big way. We will discuss today the need for this doubling of gas prices approved by the government and its impact, and whether the impact would be sustainable for the economy as well as the common man. To discuss this, I have with me former Power Secretary in the Government of India, Anil Razdan, Nilotpal Basu, former MP and Central Committee member, CPIM, Himangshu, Senior Editor, Economic Times, Salil, Garg, Director, India Ratings and Research, and on the phone line from Kolkata will be Paranjoy, Guha, Thakurta, a Senior Journalist and Economic Analyst. We will start immediately now with Mr. Razdan. Mr. Razdan, this decision of the government to double virtually the gas prices from April 2014. Do you think this is a viable and a justifiable decision?
I think the gas price revision was due next year in April. But the Rangarajan committee, which had given a report, had presented certain arguments, but I think a major flaw in it was that the main consumers, the power and the fertilizer sector, had not been consulted.
Right.
There was very marginal consultation, I think, with only one power company, as far as I know.
Yes.
Thereafter, I think when the cabinet note was moved, there were comments from the power and fertilizer ministries,
right,
which one had expected would be taken into account. Because the end result is that the power tariff will certainly go up from these gas-fired stations who are already proving unviable for lack of gas.
Right.
And also the fertilizer industry obviously will also have an impact.
Right.
And ultimately the consumer.
Right.
It has been mentioned somewhere that the gas-based stations are only a small fraction of the overall power generation basket in the country.
Right.
But that will skew the demand more towards
coal.
The coal-based power,
right,
which globally people are trying to reduce for greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
So maybe we could have waited for a little while more for getting a views and a little more public debate on the issue. A gas price was certainly due now. But I think the picture has over the years become a little confusing. Okay. Who has the right to set up the price through the NELP contracts? Was it the contracts? Was it the EGOM? Was it now the Supreme Court which has given certain directions?
Yes.
And whether the prices should be denominated in dollars or in rupees.
Right. I think you have raised several important...
We have certainly to make the sector attractive for investment.
Yes, that is the difference.
But I think an overall debate was due.
Okay. You raised very important several issues. We'll come back to you, Mr. Razdan. Please stay on. Paranjoy, can you hear me? Paranjoy, are you there? Paranjoy? Yes.
Yes, Girish, can you hear me?
Yes, Paranjoy. Paranjoy.
Okay. Give me a few minutes.
Yes, Razdan.
Hello. Yes, I've heard Mr. Razdan.
You heard Mr. Razdan. Now, the issue is the government is saying that this has been done in the interest of encouraging investments in exploration. You think that is a viable explanation, that's a valid explanation?
No, I do not agree with the decision or the view that a mere increase in the administered price of gas would automatically lead to better exploration, more discoveries, higher output. When the administered price of gas was increased from $2.34 per standard unit, that is MMSCMD, million metric standard cubic meters a day,
Right.
to 4.20, we saw in this period Reliance Industries Limited had originally projected that they would be producing about 80 standard
Yes.
units from
Right.
the Dhirubhai 6 block in the Krishna Godavari basin.
Right.
But the present output is less than 1/4. Instead
Right.
of 80, we are having 15.
Right.
There's no automatic guarantee that a higher administered price would lead to higher output. That's point one. The second point that Mr. Razdan made, why should it be designated in US dollars, especially at a time when the value of the rupee is crashing against the US dollar? Third point, this decision will surely help two of India's biggest corporates, the biggest corporate in the public sector, that's the Oil and Natural Gas Corporation, and the biggest corporate in the private sector, that's Reliance Industries Limited.
Right.
But it's certainly not going to help the consumers of power or the consumers of fertilizer, that is, the farmers of this country. Thirdly, I think the Thursday's meeting of the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs saw the committee deeply divided right through the middle.
Right.
Whereas Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Mr. Veerappa Moily were all supporting. In fact, they wanted $11 per unit. Finally, it was 8.4. But arranged against them was Mr. Jayapal Reddy, who was removed from the post of Petroleum Minister under controversial circumstances. Then there was Mr. Jairam Ramesh, the Rural Development Minister. There was the Power Minister, Mr. Jyotiraditya Scindia. He also didn't want such a high increase. And of course, the Fertilizers Minister, Mr. Srikant Jena. So I think it clearly shows that the government wants to put the interests of the corporates before those of the consumers.
Okay.
And the final point, point, because I won't be able to continue beyond this, Girish.
Yes,
My last point is that, the ministers overruled the recommendations of their own bureaucrats. Mr. Moily should tell us why he overruled the recommendations of his own bureaucrats, his own secretary. So I feel that this decision was deeply flawed, as were the recommendations of the Rangarajan Committee. As Mr. Razdan pointed out, there were no inadequate representation from the power and fertilizer sector. There's inadequate representation also from international energy experts. And why should, among the three benchmarks that are used to determine the price here, should be the highest price of not natural gas, but LNG, that's liquefied natural gas paid by Japan.
Absolutely.
So I feel that this decision is deeply flawed. And I think the last point I want to make is that here is a government that wants to align domestic energy prices with world energy prices. Their subsidies are a dirty word. They want to reduce subsidies on diesel and petrol. But here, Mr. Chidambaram is saying he will consider giving higher subsidies to the users of gas, the fertilizer companies and the electricity companies. And he seems to be turning his own logic on its head.
Right.
So I find this decision inexplicable.
Okay, Paranjoy.
Thank you.
Paranjoy. Thanks for joining.
Right.
Thanks for joining us, Himangshu. Various points made by both of them. You think that this decision was flawed?
I really don't think it was flawed. See, you first go to the genesis of this decision. This was based on the recommendation of the Rangarajan panel, which was set up by Jayapal Reddy when he was oil minister. Now, nobody can question the credentials or integrity of both these people involved. Okay. Now, Rangarajan, in his wisdom, came up with a particular formula. Now, the government's view is that at the current prices, there are many fields which are not viable.
Right.
Now, these are very technical things. Maybe the Director General of Hydrocarbon or some international expert can comment. But we go by what are the experts, the DGH here and the ministry. They are saying at 4.2, there are at least 4 to 5 trillion cubic feet of gas which are in such difficult terrain that it does not make economic sense to extract them. Now, once you have a higher price, you will be able to extract it. And if you do not extract it, instead of gas at 8.4, you will be importing LNG at anything. It could be 11, 12 if it is a long-term contract.
What about the argument that the British Petroleum had invested over $7 billion at this rate only, and why this new rate is being given?
See, when they had invested, the price was 4.2. Now, that was a price which was market discovered in 2009.
Right.
Now, the production sharing contract is slightly ambiguous. It says that the producer will have to discover the price from the market at an arm's length basis, which means it cannot, make its own subsidiary bid and something. And that price has to be then approved by the government.
Right.
Okay. Now, that was more or less the market determined price at that stage.
But now, at this point of time, that price is unviable.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, it is perhaps not unviable for many of the existing fields. But if you want new fields, which the government says are not viable at 4.2, if you want to generate gas from there, then you need a higher price. Now, whether it should go to 8.8 or 6 is a
Himangshu,
different
I'll come back to you. We have Mr. CM Vasudev, former Finance Secretary to the Government of India, on the phone line with us. Mr. Vasudev, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Mr. Vasudev, this decision of the Government of India, of the Cabinet Committee to revise the prices, there are a lot of criticism coming that it has been done only to favor a particular corporate house, or that this will have a cascading effect on power prices, on fertilizer prices, and it will become really unviable. What is your view on this?
No, I don't know about the corporate house. Of course, there can be those type of issues. But as a general principle, I think if you got a production sharing contract where you talk about giving market-related prices, and I think it's a good practice for giving market-related prices, especially if you're going to invite more investment in that sector. You've got a lot of hydrocarbon resources which need to be tapped. So I think for the credibility of the system to give market-determined prices, I think is a good practice.
Mr.
Number one. Number two,
right.
When you are saying, of course, there's a cascading effect is there. It is used for producing power, it is used for producing fertilizer, or then the power is used for making steel and things of that type, or automobile. So if they can get international prices, the products which are made with this raw material, I think the basic raw material, not to give them market-determined price, is also not a very good idea. So I think on many accounts, giving market-determined prices is a good thing. But the problem, I think, in our system is that even what we are saying is a market-determined price
Exactly.
is administratively determined.
Exactly.
It is not determined by the market.
That is the point I was trying to make, Mr. Vasudev.
That is a flaw which I think in our system, that we are doing administered prices and yet saying that this is a market price.
So
Even though we are importing a lot of gas today, we are willing to pay a higher price to imported gas, but we don't want to give the same price to the domestic producers.
No, but
Sorry,
but the argument is that even abroad, some of the countries, there have been reports saying that this kind of a price which is being determined now is very high. It doesn't exist in any of the other countries.
That's the problem with the administered prices. Wherever you got administered prices, somebody sitting in government or somewhere else is deciding that this, I feel, is a market price, which is quite a flawed decision. So that is a problem. But to give market-determined price to domestic producers on its own, I think is not a bad idea.
Okay. If you can stay on, please stay on, Mr. Vasudev. I'll come back to you. Nilotpal, you heard everybody.
I am tempted to.
Market-related prices is a good thing, but even this decision is not really a market-related price because it's an administered price, and the decision is flawed. There are two ways of looking at it.
I understand the predicaments of Mr. Vasudevan and Mr. Razdan, given their background. But Mr. Himangshu, what you are saying, I really don't understand, because he is pitching the soundness of the decision only on the so-called integrity of the Prime Minister and Mr. Rangarajan. Now let me just take one by one. that $2.38 when it was fixed and Reliance went back on that, the media was reporting the separation of the brothers, not the techno-economic issues.
Right.
And they had asked for a price which could not be arrived at even by a committee of secretaries.
Right.
And the group of ministers took a decision without any techno-economic input on that. And at that time, what was the logic given by the Reliance? That we have such huge deposits, we need more investments, therefore the prices must be higher.
Right.
Then they scaled down the production, and then they said that we need, it's a technical problem, we need a partner. But by that time, with the first increase, they had managed to sell 30% of the stake at a huge premium to British Petroleum. And then they started scaling down, and actually gas production has not gone up, only gone down. And now they are saying that now with this we will be able to attract investors. I believe that more of the stake they will sell off, and this is no way to fixing prices, as people are saying that these things are done in a techno-economic basis, and Reliance is just refusing to be examined by any independent body. Earlier they said that we will not be examined by CAG, we will not be examined by any concurrent independent authority, and so on and so forth. So they are just blackmailing, and the government is only too eager to please them. And Mr. Rangarajan, I don't know what understanding he has got about gas prices. How can he equate the gas which is coming out of the wells with that of the LNG? I understand that $1 increase in the price of gas per unit will fetch a 6 crore 70 lakh dollar profit for the Reliance company. So this is really a decision for the Reliance, of the Reliance, and by the Reliance.
Okay.
All our actors
Nilotpal,
all the other actors are incidental.
Nilotpal, I'll come back to you. The argument is that you said about this huge profit at every dollar, but the argument of the petroleum minister is it's going to benefit the public sector also. I'll come back to you on this. Yes. Mr. Sunil, Mr. Salil Garg, you're not a politician, you're an independent analyst. Now tell us, how much of this does it make sense? That the Rangarajan formula, which has been now accepted by the government of India, and this price which has been fixed, you think all this makes sense?
Well, without getting into the merit of the process or the merit of the persons involved, I would just like to say that in case they have increased the price using the argument that it will help exploration of certain blocks which are unviable, but then it should be applicable to the blocks which have not been explored where it is unviable, but the price has been increased across the board for all the blocks where probably even they were viable at $4.2. So that in itself answers
the fact that British Petroleum had invested that huge amount, buying 30% of the stake and were willing to go ahead at $4.2, is an argument which the present price hike doesn't really sustain. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, we really do not know at what price did the British Petroleum actually valued the investment of $7 billion.
No, but they were supposed to get 4.2 per unit.
That was
2014 only.
Until 2014.
So until 2014, that was the prevailing price when they made the investment. But I am not aware, nor is the public aware, that if they anticipated any increase in the price when they invested this money into Reliance.
So do you think that the government's argument that this hike in prices will bring in new investors, do you think that is a justifiable argument?
That argument might have some merit, that it might help bring in some new investment into the country, but my counter argument is that how does it help the blocks which are already viable at $4.2?
So what you're trying to say is by hiking the price, government is allowing these people who already have blocks and which has already been explored a huge benefit, a huge.
Definitely, there will be a windfall gain for those blocks which are viable at $4.2 also, which are producing at $4.2.
Which are these blocks? Can you name them?
So I will not have the cost figures of all the blocks, but one can assume that if the investment has already been made,
The charge that this is done only to benefit the Reliance, is that a sustainable charge?
and I would not like to comment specifically as a rating
See,
agency.
by all accounts, ONGC gains more.
Gains more, there is no doubt about it. But the cascading effect on all these things, that on power and fertilizer, these are two very important issues. What is your take on this whole, how the power industry will suffer?
Definitely there will be a cascading effect. As per a calculation which you have done, if last year we generated about 65 billion units through gas-based IPPs, and if this effect is passed on to those units only, the total impact will be close to 12,800 crores per annum. So that is the additional
12,800 crores extra.
Yes.
Somebody has to pay. per
Yes,
annum.
somebody has to pay. It will either have to be borne by the DISCOMs or the state governments or the consumers.
Or the state government, which means that subsidize.
Yes.
The government will have to subsidize.
Yes.
Let me get Mr. Razdan in. Mr. Razdan, is that the solution if the price
Yes,
goes
sir.
up now with the revised price going up? So the subsidizing these gas-based power plants is the only option.
Well, that's what the finance minister also has admitted, I think quite candidly. But I would only like to see what is our financial situation on the 1st of April next year, whether we can bear that subsidy. And if that subsidy is to be given, ONGC and Oil India, etc., have been giving subsidies from their side to stabilize the prices.
Right.
But I do not think any private power producers have been paying that subsidy
So the
from that side.
So which means that
But I think there are one or two issues you see. Yeah, the
no.
PSUs will, it's not clear that whether we'll ask the private sector companies also to be giving this subsidy or sharing a portion of that subsidy. That is a moot point. I think on the lighter side, way back in school, I was asked not to believe anything that begins on the 1st of April.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Razdan,
I
please stay
hope
back.
we stick back.
Mr.
See,
Yes, Himangshu.
there's something I want to say on
Yes.
subsidy. One of the reasons
10,000 odd crores, he says,
Okay.
extra, somebody will have to pay.
See, that will happen if the state electricity board decide to buy all this gas-based power.
Who else will buy?
See, what they very often do is, because their financial situation is so bad, they'll rather have a blackout for 6 hours in a city than to buy costly
So
power.
you,
No, that's been
what are you
the
trying to
practice.
suggest?
I'm
You're trying to suggest that the government should.
No, I'm not suggesting anything. I am just anticipating what a state electricity board will do. See, the average cost of power in India today is around 3 rupees 50 paisa according to estimates. It won't be exactly that. And again, according to estimates, after this price hike, the gas-fired plants will have to sell at 5 rupees 50 paisa.
Right.
Now, for a state electricity board in a North Indian state, which is in heavy losses, at the mercy of its political masters, it will simply say, okay, you are selling at 550, thanks, I don't want it. Now, this is
And
going to...
we'll do with the shortage of power, whatever they have.
They already do that. There is a lot of surplus power. There are states with surplus power, sometimes because of grid problems, and sometimes because the SEB simply says that, look, we cannot afford these losses. Every extra unit we supply, our losses go up. So it will create a problem for the power plant owners. So the real problem is those people who have set up gas-fired plant, what happened to them? As far as the consumer is concerned, given the fact that there's 9 or 10% of total generation is there, to you and me, the net impact might be 10, 12 paisa, maybe even less.
Okay, well, let me get Mr. Razdan, quickly, can you react to that?
I don't know, Himangshu, I think this morning I read some piece which said something like tear gas. You used the term tear gas in your item. But my own feeling is yes. You see, unless we have a time of day metering and a peak hour tariff,
Yes.
or a peak time tariff, it's
That's right.
only then you see that this expensive power can go in. And if we are going to have plants which are going to operate only for 2-3 hours a day, I do not know how viable they would be and whether we should be making such huge investments in that.
Okay.
But
okay, Mr. Razdan.
maybe we could have, as is mentioned, for new investments, obviously you need a better price, a bigger price.
Okay.
And let's see what the international prices are going to be. And then there is also a division between domestically consumed gas and what you're exporting.
Exactly. And Nilotpal, very quickly, last words to you. We completely run out of time.
I think people are behaving as if the Krishna Godavari gas is Reliance's family legacy, that market prices will have to be given as if they are owners of the gas. They are not owners, they are operators. And all through, they have actually told utter lies to justify the increase of price, and it has not happened. It has not led to increased production. So Mr. Himangshu will think that giving them higher price is to ensure viability, but he thinks that the people of India, they have perpetual patience so that whatever the impact on them is there, that is viable.
Okay. On that note, I think we'll have to end. Sorry to all my guests, we completely run out of time. This is an issue which cannot be decided in half an hour, but this is a major issue, I'm sure, which will, the debate in this country will continue, and with the parliament session coming up, I'm sure this will come up in the parliament also. But this is something which members of not just political parties, but even the corporate sector, everybody is interested in. We'll wait and watch how this will develop. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. C.M. Vasudev, Mr. Anil Razdan, Mr. Himangshu Vats, Salil, Garg, Paranjoy, Guha, Thakurta, and Nilotpal, Basu. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture, same time tomorrow.